The diner smelled of fresh coffee and fried bacon, its hum of conversation broken only by the clatter of dishes. Emily weaved between tables with practiced grace, balancing a tray stacked high with plates. Her smile was soft, the kind that made strangers feel welcome, even though her shoes pinched and her back ached from the double shift. She set down a plate of pancakes in front of a little boy, ruffling his hair when he grinned at her. But behind the counter, her manager's eyes narrowed. "Too slow, Emily," he barked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her cheeks flushed, but she bit her tongue and hurried back for another order. She was used to it, patience had always been her armor. Then, as she reached for the coffee pot, his voice boomed across the room. "That's it. I'm done with you. You're fired." The words sliced through the chatter, and suddenly the diner grew still. Forks froze midair. Strangers turned in their booths, watching as Emily stood frozen in shock, her hand trembling around the pot. She tried to swallow the lump in her throat, willing the tears to stay hidden, but the humiliation burned too deep. Slowly, she set the pot down and reached for the pendant at her neck, the little silver charm her late mother had given her. It was her anchor in storms like this, a reminder of strength when she felt small. She clutched it tightly, wishing her mother were still alive to tell her everything would be okay. At a corner booth near the window, a man in an immaculate suit stirred his coffee absent-mindedly. His presence barely registered with the regulars, most didn't recognize him, and those who did whispered in hushed tones. Richard Hayes, a billionaire known more for his skyscrapers and foundations than for quiet diners in small towns, had stopped only because the highway felt endless and lonely. He was used to boardrooms and gala halls, not chipped mugs and laminated menus. Yet something about this place, ordinary and unpolished, had drawn him in. When the manager's voice rang out, Richard looked up, frowning at the cruelty in the words. His eyes followed the waitress, Emily, as she stood frozen, humiliation painting her face. She looked so young, so tired, yet she wore a brave mask as if she had endured this kind of treatment before. Richard almost looked away, telling himself it wasn't his business. But then he saw it, gleaming faintly in the dull light of the diner. A silver pendant rested against her collarbone, catching his gaze like a hook. His breath caught. The room seemed to tilt as his chest tightened with memories he had buried for years. He knew that pendant. He had seen it once before, pressed against the neck of a woman who had leaned over him after glass and metal had torn his world apart. His coffee sat untouched as his hands trembled. Richard Hayes, a man who thought nothing could shake him anymore, suddenly went pale. Richard rose from his seat so abruptly that the legs of his chair screeched across the linoleum floor. Every head in the diner turned toward him, but he didn't notice the stares. His eyes were locked on Emily, on the pendant resting just above her heart. He moved closer, each step heavy, as though pulled by something greater than himself. Emily blinked at him, startled, clutching the little charm instinctively as if to shield it. Where did you get that?" Richard's voice cracked, raw with disbelief. For a moment, Emily hesitated, unsure why a stranger cared about her necklace. "It was my mother's," she whispered finally. "She wore it every day. It's all I have left of her." The word struck him like a blow. His throat tightened, and suddenly the diner blurred. Images he had tried to bury came flooding back. Twisted metal, shattered glass, the scent of gasoline, and a woman's trembling hands pulling him from the wreckage. She had spoken softly, reassuring him, even as her own body shook. And there, against his bloodied shoulder, he had seen it, the same pendant. Tears welled in his eyes as the truth crystallized. This young woman standing before him was her daughter, the daughter of the stranger who had saved his life when he had been nothing more than a broken man lying on a highway. His voice trembled as he whispered, almost reverently, "Your mother, she was the one who saved me." The manager folded his arms, smirking at the growing tension. "Sir, if you're here to defend her, don't bother. She's lazy, clumsy, and frankly not worth keeping around." His voice dripped with disdain, as if Emily were nothing more than a nuisance he'd finally rid himself of. Emily's cheeks burned, and she wished she could disappear into the floor. But before she could retreat, Richard's voice rang out, steady and commanding, echoing through the hushed diner. "Worthless," he repeated, his tone sharp enough to cut through the silence. He turned to the manager, his expression cold. "Do you even know who you're speaking about? This young woman carries the legacy of a hero." Gasps rippled through the room as he placed a trembling hand over his chest. His voice softened, but the emotion behind it was undeniable. "Years ago, I should have died in a car accident. A stranger pulled me from the wreckage, kept me alive until help arrived. She saved my life, and she wore that pendant." He pointed gently toward Emily's necklace, his eyes glistening. The diner fell silent, every face wide with awe. Richard turned back to Emily, his voice breaking. "Your mother's courage gave me a second chance. And now, it's my turn to honor that gift. Emily, I want you to work with me. Not in a diner that doesn't see your worth, but in my foundation, where your compassion can change lives." The manager's smugness vanished, replaced by stunned disbelief. Emily's lips parted, but for a moment no words came. The weight of everything, her humiliation, her grief, and now this staggering revelation, pressed against her chest until tears spilled freely down her cheeks. Around her, the silence cracked into something unexpected. A woman in the corner dabbed her eyes with a napkin. A man at the counter began to clap, slow and steady, until others joined in. The same diner that had witnessed her dismissal now pulsed with warmth and admiration. Richard stepped closer, his voice gentle but resolute. "Your mother gave me my life. Let me give you a chance to live yours fully." He extended his hand, not as a billionaire, but as a man indebted to kindness. Emily stared at it, trembling, then at the pendant resting over her heart. She could almost hear her mother's voice whispering encouragement, telling her not to let fear keep her small. With a shaky breath, she placed her hand in his. A rush of relief and possibility surged through her, as though a door she never knew existed had been flung wide open. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. The diner erupted in applause. Strangers smiled at her, no longer seeing the fired waitress, but someone extraordinary. Emily glanced at the pendant one last time, her tears now edged with hope. "Thank you, Mom," she murmured softly. And in that moment, she knew, kindness never disappears. It lives on, echoing across time, changing lives in ways the world could never predict.